No, not the video, go away.
Hi everyone, this is Hannah. Today is Saturday, January 9th, I believe, and today I'm gonna try to do my first reading vlog. The book I'm going to be reading is called This House is Haunted by John Boyne. I don't know too much about it. I just read a little blurb before I got it at the library, but I don't even really remember by now what it said, so I'll read the inside description and try to get first impressions. It says, written in Dickinson Prose, This House is Haunted is a striking homage to the classic 19th century ghost story. In Norfolk, England in 1867, Eliza Kane, Kane reminds me of a different book, and Eliza is actually a character in the book I just read, responds to an ad for a governess position in Godlin Hall. When she arrives, shaken by an unsettling disturbance that occurred during her travels, she is greeted by the two children now in her care, Isabella and Eustace. There is no adult present to represent her mysterious employer, and the children offer no explanation. Later that night in her room, another terrifying experience further reinforces the sense that something is very wrong. From the moment Eliza rises the following morning, her every step seems dogged by a malign presence that lives within Godlin's walls. Eliza realizes that if she and the children are to survive its violent attentions, she must first uncover the hall's long-buried secrets and confront the demons of its past. Clever, captivating, and witty, This House is Haunted is pure entertainment with a catch. So that description right off the bat just immediately makes me think of the book Turn of the Screw by Henry James, I believe the author of that is. And I have read that, and I did enjoy it until the ending. The ending wasn't that great for me. So I'm hoping the end of this one is a bit better. So I've just started this book. I'm only 20 pages in, but I think I'm gonna stop for the night because I feel and look really tired. The front of this says it's written in Dickinson Prose, which for some reason my brain translated that as verse and that this was gonna be written in an interesting way. That's not the case though. I did not know what Dickinson Prose was. I mean, obviously I figured it had something to do with Charles Dickens, but I googled it and it says it's more common to use the adjective when you talk about poverty or extreme social inequality, subjects that Dickens famously examined in his novels. Modern journalists often describe bleak scenes of hardship, homeless families, hungry children, squalid living spaces, or unsafe working conditions as Dickinson. So I figure that's going to be some of the themes going on in the book here. However, literally with the first sentence, the author says, I blame Charles Dickens for the death of my father. It's like, oh, okay, well, the Dickens references are coming in strong. And the first 20 pages is literally just the main character, Eliza, going to a reading by Charles Dickens of a new story he wrote that is a ghost story. And so her and her father like go and listen to that, and that's literally just all that happens in the first 20 pages. So yeah, I guess Dickinson was a good way of putting it, but I wasn't expecting him to like literally be in the story. Hello again. Today is Sunday, January the 10th, I think. You can probably hear the laundry going in the background because I just started that. We also just cleaned the chinchilla cage. We have freshly clean cage here. This Pikachu and Appa. So clean. Please don't jump out. No jumping. No jumping. Now I have to get ready and not look so terrible because we're gonna go play D&D with some friends. Well, today is Monday, and I didn't film anything last night. I was way too tired. I just tried to read as much as I could and just went straight to sleep. Today so far has mainly just been getting stuff together to pick up my carte vitale tomorrow, yay! Which is essentially my residence card for here in France. Definitely a big deal for everyone who isn't French, so be glad to have that. Good for 2 more years. I got to chapter 7 last night in the book, which is about page 65. So far, pretty much the end of each chapter is just the main character Eliza going like, this bad thing happened, but it gets worse. This next bad thing happened, but it's gonna get worse, and no one warned me how bad it was gonna get. So it's essentially just her telling stuff about her background and some like little spooky things that happen up until her leaving her town, and just kind of her being ominous about what's gonna happen. It doesn't really seem like it's gonna be relevant to the story itself, but pretty much she just keeps talking about ghosts and ghost stories in general, and it's like we already know what that this is gonna be, so it just kind of seems like a bit of an overkill. However, once she gets to the house, the new house she's going to be living in and being a governess in, stuff happens within like 10 minutes of her being there. So, luckily, about 50 pages in, it seems like it's really going to pick up. I'm probably going to read it a little bit more now or within the next few hours. So, we'll see if it keeps that pace. I really hope so. I like that it's her first night there. Something has already happened. We aren't just gonna be like, oh, she talked this up and now nothing's going on. So we'll see. So it's the evening now, a bit after 9, I believe. I did read a few chapters mid-afternoon, and now I'm on chapter 14, which is page 143. I'm just about halfway through the book, and the end of that last chapter was really interesting. Stuff's starting to happen more. This really reminds me of The Turn of the Screw and the Netflix show The Haunting of Bly Manor, which is actually based on The Turn of the Screw and other of Henry James' works. This might as well just be kind of a retelling of that story a bit, but probably not as good in the end. So far there isn't much interaction with the children actually. But the interaction that there has been, they're kind of the stereotype in these kind of like gothic stories. Like it's the same with Turn of the Screw and Haunting of Bly Manor, where they're like really prim and proper and speak with good vocabulary, and they're always dressed as if they're going out and just more intelligent beyond their years. Like the children in this are aged 8 and 12, and they seem to know more about the subjects the governess is teaching than she does, and it's just kind of like, okay then. So the story just feels really familiar so far. It doesn't feel like it's doing much new. However, the things the ghosts are doing in the house is a bit different from your typical haunted house story, so that I do appreciate so far. I do have a theory on who or what the ghosts are. I'm not gonna like spoil that, but the story makes it really obvious unless there's some huge twist. I think it's pretty clear like who they are and what their motives are behind why they're doing what they're doing. I hope there's some more tense scenes going in, because at first it was just like, oh, cool, stuff's happening right away. And now it's kind of slowed down a bit. It's more kind of like an info dump at the moment of the past of the place, which is okay, because the chapter just ended with a cool, like, aha moment, but that's about it so far. Like, it's okay. I'm enjoying reading it. It's easier to read than I expected it was going to be. But it just feels like a familiar story. Like it feels like stuff I've read before. And that's about it. Hello, today is Wednesday. I skipped filming yesterday because we weren't exactly in a place that we would have been allowed to do that. And also it was extremely windy and rainy out. It was even snowing a bit. So yeah, that would not have been good at all. Yesterday, we went and picked up my carte de séjour, so I have that for the next 2 years, so I'm all good there. I apologize for the lighting. It's nighttime here, and we only have one source of light in the main room here, and that's literally right above where the camera is right now. So it is what it is. Also, I forgot in the beginning of the video to mention that I have everything covered in fleece here because our cat Ori is really bad about scratching and getting into things, so he'll pretty much just destroy or chomp on everything if it's not covered with fleece. And Torty is currently trying to get him up. Hey you, cutie. There she is. I only read a few chapters last night, but this afternoon I did finish reading This House is Haunted. It's not the greatest book, that's for sure. Overall, I would probably end up rating it between 2.5 to 3 stars because it was okay and I kind of liked some parts of it, so it's kind of bordering on just it was okay and I liked it for me. So on Goodreads, I just rounded it up to 3 stars since they don't do halves, unfortunately. For me, this book had a lot of great potential because the first 50 pages is pretty much how the main character Eliza gets to Godlin Hall, the mansion, and everything. And the book is very self-aware in that those first 50 pages, they do talk about ghosts a lot. It's just a lot of foreshadowing into what's going to happen. And then when she gets there, the fact that something spooky like happens right away when she gets there, I had really high hopes. Okay, now we're really going to get into the scary, intense bits of this book. But unfortunately, it just went in a different direction than I was expecting. Instead of most of the book taking place at Godlin Hall and with the children that are there, it takes place in the town the house is in, and with the townspeople there, and at one point she even travels back to London, and a majority of the book is pretty much just her interacting with the townspeople to find out what's happening, what's going on, and it makes it more of just a plain mystery for me than a horror. And one thing that detracts from that, though, is pretty much like halfway through the book, we already know the huge secret, the huge twist, and it just kind of makes all that tension and anything that could be scary just kind of dissipate. It's just not there anymore since we already know what's going on and what to expect as well. Also, something that's really slowed the story down for me is even though we realize what's going on about halfway through the book, Eliza really doesn't. She's written as a very plain character that can't think critically, even though she's a school teacher and she's supposed to be really intelligent, that's how she comes off. But she has no critical thinking skills at all. It was just so frustrating. She was making every character literally spell out exactly what happened, and she could not figure out anything on her own, to the point where even characters in the book were kind of making fun of her for it and are like, do you really need me to say this? And it just made things way too spelled out and obvious, and we're given the same information as Eliza, but we figure it out right away and she needs more time, and so it just kind of makes it, what plot there is, drag, because there's really nothing else for us to gain. One thing that seemed kind of odd to me as well is how the townspeople react to everything that's happened there. Pretty much the events that they tell Eliza about happened a year ago and took place within that year. And no one really ever finds the things that are happening strange or things that needs to be investigated or anything like that. They're just like, oh, this is all coincidences, moving on. No one sees a pattern or anything like that, and it just blows my mind. And the one outsider that's like, what the heck, why is no one freaking out about this, is deemed as a hysteric. because she's a woman. And that was a bit frustrating in some parts of how she's just blown off at every opportunity, even though she's saying the same things that previous people said, but they're now gone. And this is annoying. There was one funny bit in this book where I actually had to take a picture of the paragraph with my phone. This is another part of how the book is a bit self-aware. In the second half of the book, one of the characters says, she behaved as if she was a character in a ghost story. And that was just way too on the nose. And there were little bits and pieces like that where I thought that the author was trying to put some humor in it. So I was wondering if this book was actually supposed to have more humor than what I was getting out of it personally, but I'm really not sure on that. As for the climax of the story, it just goes really weird, and it felt like a scene from Dragon Ball Z to me, and it just really didn't fit with the rest of the story at all for me. It just wasn't really satisfying, and it was also kind of sudden. Like pretty much Eliza just kind of gets fed up with everything and is like, all right, we're ending this right now, and then it's like, oh, okay, it's over. However, the last chapter is only a few paragraphs, and the way that ends just made like reading that whole book worth it. It's definitely one of those where it kind of tried to redeem itself in some places, and I'm just glad it ended the way it did, because it ended on a really great note, which definitely helped its rating for me. But I still think it's probably leaning more to a 2.5, because the more I think about the book, the more I dislike it and find things that I didn't quite like about it and were wrong with it. And overall, it just really didn't add anything new to this genre or this story. Like, I feel like I've read this same story at least 2 times before, and so it just felt repetitive. It was easy to read though, and I still feel like it was okay. It's just not exactly what I was looking for or expected, as the cat is bathing in the background. Well, that's my first reading vlog. Hopefully there will be more to come. I'm not really using any method to pick which books that I'm going to do a reading vlog with or not. It's just pretty much going to depend on how long has it been since I put out my last video kind of thing. I don't think there's really going to be any rhyme or reason to it, just like I don't really make a TBR. I just kind of make sure the books I want to get at the library are there and not checked out, and I just pick up 2 or 3 at a time, go through those, and just do the cycle again. Well, until next time, see ya!